Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tearing down the polished corporate marketing to look at what's really going on with the infrastructure and data economics driving modern surveillance. We're going to explore four systemic realities of the digital world that mainstream discussions almost always miss. Let's kick things off with a pretty big question. What if literally everything you know about digital privacy is completely outdated? To figure that out, we have to ignore the PR spin and look at what systems engineers and privacy analysts are actually seeing under the hood. So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the architecture of surveillance, then hit the third-party loophole, execution layer vector indexing, the local privacy illusion, and wrap up with regulation as market capture. We're going to deconstruct this whole machine layer by layer. Let's jump into Section 1, the architecture of surveillance, and peel back that corporate marketing to see our actual digital reality. You know, when most people talk about data access, they immediately picture spy movie scenarios, wiretaps, forced backdoors, secret warrants. But the structural reality, it's actually way more mundane. It is driven almost entirely by data economics, basic infrastructure, and off-the-shelf purchasing. Which brings us to Section 2, the third-party loophole. Think of this as the legal extraction pipeline. It's honestly wild how this corporate state data pipeline operates right out in the open. It all hinges on a U.S. legal precedent called the third-party doctrine. Basically, this rule says that any information you voluntarily hand over to a third party, think your ISP, a cloud provider, or an AI platform, loses a ton of its Fourth Amendment protection. Because you quote-unquote chose to share it, it's just not legally guarded the way you'd assume. So what does this actually mean for us? It means we've effectively swapped out judges and warrants for, well, a credit card. Federal agencies don't necessarily need a warrant to get their hands on your consumer profile. They just use their commercial purchasing power. It's a shopping trip, not a legal battle. This whole loophole works in three super simple steps. Step 1. Big tech legally aggregates your data using those massive terms of service agreements we all just blindly click accept on. Step 2. Commercial data brokers step in to scrape and package all that behavioral, location, and linguistic data. And Step 3. Public agencies just buy those packages off the shelf. Boom. A perfectly legal, commercially driven extraction pipeline. All right, let's look at how the actual tech processes this in Section 3, execution layer vector indexing. This is the algorithmic reality. Most mainstream privacy debates are completely stuck in the past, arguing about keyword filters, like a system just scanning for a specific red flag word. But guys, modern predictive systems do not care about static words. Instead, they are tracking your semantic and behavioral trajectories. They are literally mapping out your thoughts and habits, not just checking your vocabulary. This happens through something called vector indexing. And here is the truly wild part. These models dynamically map your inputs into high-dimensional vector spaces. And notice that phrase, during active runtime. That means it's happening live, right exactly as you type and interact. The result is what analysts call a permanent mathematical fingerprint of your cognitive style, reasoning patterns, and vulnerabilities. And because standard data privacy laws are designed around protecting stored static text, they completely miss this. This mathematical profiling happens on the fly, woven directly into the math of the processing itself, bypassing those old-school regulations entirely. Now, let's talk about the physical devices sitting right in front of you. Section 4, the local privacy illusion, exploring the hardware and infrastructure layer. We all have these little rituals, right? We toggle our privacy settings, we clear our search histories. Maybe we use apps that promise to process things locally. We do this assuming it disconnects us from the broader network dragnet. But talk to any systems engineer, and they'll tell you straight up, it's mostly an illusion. Here is the harsh infrastructure reality. Modern consumer operating systems and chipsets are built with persistent telemetry. So even if an app says it's running locally, the underlying hardware is constantly calling home, pinging enterprise servers to log diagnostic metadata, hardware IDs, and interaction timing. This persistent, baked-in telemetry simply overrides whatever superficial software settings you just tweaked. So the takeaway here? True isolation is incredibly difficult. Unless you're literally cracking open your device to make physical modifications and completely air-gapping it from any network, escaping this dragnet on standard consumer hardware is practically impossible. Finally, let's zoom out and look at the rules of the game in Section 5. Regulation as market capture. the systemic shield. We usually assume that when governments are slow or inefficient at regulating tech, it's just classic bureaucratic slowness, or maybe they just don't get it. But the structural truth is much more calculated. It's deliberate complexity management. Giant tech monopolies actively encourage massive, multi-thousand-page regulatory frameworks. Think of it like a giant moat. Big tech monopolies have billions of dollars, so they can easily afford to hire massive compliance teams to navigate endless red tape. But independent developers, small startups, open source creators, they have limited capital. They literally get choked out by these impossible barriers to entry. And that's exactly the point. This deliberate complexity effectively locks in the market dominance of the existing giants under the guise of safety. The regulation itself becomes a weapon for market capture. It cements the power of the monopolies, who can afford to play the compliance game, while squashing any smaller innovators who might threaten them. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. If incredibly complex privacy regulations primarily serve to lock in the dominance of the existing tech giants, who is that regulation really keeping safe? Is the system designed to protect your privacy, or is it meticulously engineered to protect the machine extracting it? Something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer, and keep questioning the infrastructure around you.